take a look at this graphic. I would like that graphic to be anchored to this text here, so that if that text moves up and down, the graphic moves as well. Currently, it's just sitting there floating with text wrap around it. So if I come over here and double-click on some text, that switches to the Type tool, and I just delete some random text for show, you can see that the text moves, but the image does not. So that's not what I want. I want the image to move with the text. Can I do that? I can, but I have to make that image an inline object. Here's how to do it. First, I'll undo that with a Command-Z or Control-Z on Windows to get my text back. And now, to turn that graphic into an inline object, I have to select it with the Selection tool, the black arrow tool. So I'll click once on it, and it doesn't select because it's actually behind that text frame. So I'll Command-click or Control-click. That clicks through the text frame to select the image. And I'll cut it to my clipboard by pressing Command-X or Control-X on Windows. So now it's on the clipboard. To turn it into an inline object inside the text, I need the Type tool. So I cut it with the Selection tool, and I paste it with the Type tool. Let's go get that. I'll grab the Type tool, click at the end of this paragraph, press Return, and then paste. Command-V or Control-V on Windows to paste it. So it is now a part of that line. When you make an inline object, the object acts just like a piece of text, like a character of text. For example, I could select over it by clicking and dragging to the left, and you'll see that it actually selects it. It's selected as though it were a character of text. If I hit delete, it deletes. I'll undo that, Command-Z or Control-Z, to bring it back because I need to play with it a little bit more. Now, even though it's a character of text, I can still select it with the Selection tool. Let's go grab that and click on it, and you can see that it's selected now as an object. And then I'm going to just drag it down. And when I drag it down, you'll see that it makes more room for it. I can drag it all the way down until it's right in the middle of the paragraph. Now that will flow with this text. Let's try it out. I'll double-click to get my Type tool. I'll select some text like I did before, delete it, and did you see that? The image moved with the text. If I type some random text in here, just by pressing Enter and a bunch of random text, you'll see it flows down in the text column. So it is inline. It even shows up in the story editor, sort of. Let's take a look. I'll go to the Edit menu and choose Edit in Story Editor, and you can see that the inline object shows up as a little ship's anchor icon. This is handy because I can move it anywhere I want. Let's say I want it at the beginning of the next paragraph instead. I'll select it by dragging over it, and I'm going to drag it down, and you can see the little cursor move, so wherever I let it go is going to end up. I'm going to drag it down to just before the word for, and I let go, and as soon as I do that, it updates on my page. I'll close the Story Editor window here so we can see this better. Now what's going on here? Why is there so much space? There's space because of text wrap. Inline objects can cause text wrap like other objects, except there's one important thing you need to know about. Let me go select that with the Selection tool. Oops, I clicked on the content grabber instead, so I'll hit Escape to select the frame instead of the content. And now I'm going to open the text wrap panel. Let's see what's going on here. This has text wrap applied to it, and it's forcing the text to skip past it. Now here's the important thing you need to know about text wrap and inline objects. Inline objects with text wrap only affect lines after the line they're placed on. So in this case, the graphic is on this first line, just before the letter F, so it will not affect this line at all, but it does affect all the other lines after it. If I change this text wrap to something else, like wrap around the frame, you'll see that now the text flows around the object itself. However, if I push this object up, you'll notice that it does not cause any wrap on the previous paragraph, only on lines after the line on which it's sitting. Now I've dragged this image up and down, and that's no problem, but why can't I drag it left or right? Well, you just can't do that with inline objects, but you can do it with anchored objects. What's the difference? Well, let me show you. I'll go to the Object menu and choose Options from the Anchored Object submenu. The Anchored Object Options dialog box gives me a bunch of options, and I'm not going to go into all the details here, other than to say that if I want to control how high or low this is, I could type a number in. What I'm really caring about here is this Position pop-up menu. Inline objects can only go up or down, but if I change this to Custom, I get a very different effect. Custom objects, what I call anchored objects to differentiate them from inline objects, can be moved anywhere on my page. Now this dialog box is very confusing, and I'm not going to go into the details of all these options here. What I am going to tell you is once you change this to a custom object, you can click OK and then drag this anywhere you want. For example, I could move this out here into the margin. I just dragged it over. Now it's still anchored or placed in the text, so if the text flows, this will move with it. And I can see exactly where it's anchored by going to the View menu, choosing Extras, and turning on Show Text Threads. Show Text Threads indicates with this dashed line exactly where it's anchored in. Again, Story Editor would also show me that. I'm going to zoom back to Fit Spread and Window with Command-Option-Z or Control-Alt-Z. Let's move this panel out of the way so we can see things better. And I want to point out that this really will flow with the text. For example, if I go ahead and select this text frame and delete it entirely, not only does the text now jump from the left page to the right page, but that anchored object came with it. Now the only problem with this anchored object is that it's too easy to accidentally click and move to some other position. I don't want to allow that. So I'm going to go back to the Object menu, choose Options under Anchored Options, and I want to turn on this checkbox, Prevent Manual Positioning. When that checkbox is turned on, I can no longer accidentally move this someplace else. You actually see a little lock icon next to it to indicate that it's not going to get moved. It will move up and down with the text, but I can't drag it to some other location. For now, the important thing is to see that you can set up relationships between text and objects quite easily and quickly when you use the inline and anchored objects.